Ladies and gentlemen, we gather to talk about a concept that is at the heart of so much of what we do in life: promises. The promises we make to others, the promises others make to us, and the promises we make to ourselves. Promises have weight, don't they? They carry expectation, hope, and a sense of responsibility. They are words that bind us together, weaving our actions into commitments. But with every promise comes a problem. We often fail to acknowledge the promise itself. You see, promises are built on expectations. The moment we say, "I promise," we create a vision in someone's mind, a picture of how things should be. And often that picture isn't in our control. We hope we can meet those expectations, but life has a way of challenging what we think we can guarantee. We promise to show up, to be there, to change, to grow. But sometimes the road we travel doesn't look anything like the path we envisioned when we made that promise. And that's where the problem begins. Unkept promises, they sting, they hurt. They leave a void where there was once trust. When promises are broken, we feel it, whether it's the promise someone made to us or the promises we made to ourselves. It's easy to feel betrayed, abandoned, and disappointed. Sometimes we even start to doubt our own ability to keep our word. How many of us have stood in front of the mirror telling ourselves, "I promise to do better tomorrow," only to face another day of the same struggle? And yet, in the midst of those broken promises lies the powerful truth, the promise of change. Every promise we make to ourselves is a seed planted, hoping to grow into something beautiful. We tell ourselves we'll eat healthier, work harder, show more love. But when we don't immediately see the change we expect, we wonder if it was all just wishful thinking. But growth isn't instant. It's messy, uneven, and sometimes it feels like we're taking 2 steps back for every 1 step forward. Here's the truth: the danger of promises isn't in their creation, it's in overcommitting. How often do we promise more than we can give? We promise to be everything to everyone, to be everywhere, to fix every problem. But we are not designed to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. Sometimes life throws us curveballs that we cannot prepare for. And when we overpromise, we wear ourselves thin, only to realize that we're stretched so thin that we can't even keep the promises that matter most. But don't be discouraged, because in the heart of every broken promise is an opportunity for growth. Every time we fall short, we have the chance to learn, not just about what we can do, but about who we are. We learn our limits, our weaknesses, and our resilience. We learn that perfection is not the goal, growth is. And growth often comes from the failures, the missteps, and the moments when we break down just to build ourselves back up. And then comes the most important part, the healing. Healing from broken promises is not easy, but it is possible. If someone else broke their promise to you, forgiveness is the path to peace. If you broke a promise to yourself, grace is the key to moving forward. Let go of the disappointment. Let go of the guilt. The past does not define you. It shapes you, yes, but it does not determine your future. Healing means acknowledging that mistakes are part of the journey, and that broken promises don't mean broken people. So let me say this to you tonight: keep making promises, keep dreaming big, keep hoping. Yes, there will be times when promises fall through, but that doesn't mean you should stop promising. Don't abandon the desire to do better, to be better. Don't allow the mistakes of yesterday to rob you of the hope of tomorrow. Promise yourself resilience. Promise yourself the courage to rise after every fall. Promise yourself that you will keep moving forward with the strength and wisdom you've gained. Because the problem with a promise isn't that they are flawed, it's that we are human. And being human means that sometimes we'll break our word, but we can always rebuild and do better next time. So promise to never give up on yourself. Promise to keep believing that better days are ahead. And most importantly, promise to show up for yourself, even when the world feels uncertain. We all know the power of a promise. It's something we make to others, to ourselves, and often to the world around us. A promise is not just a word, it's a weight we carry, sometimes without even realizing it. The moment we say, I promise, something shifts. There's an unspoken agreement, a silent expectation that binds us. It's as if the universe stands still for just a moment, waiting to see if we will fulfill what we've spoken. Promises have this incredible ability to shape the future, and yet they can also leave us feeling burdened, unsure, and even afraid of falling short. Think about the promises you've made in your life, the ones you've made to your loved ones, to your friends, to your children. Those promises, small or big, carry an energy that lingers. It's in the way we swear to be there for someone when they need us, or the way we vow to change and grow to become better versions of ourselves. Every promise is like a seed planted in the soil of expectation. And like any seed, the conditions we give it will determine whether it grows into something strong or withers away. We also know that promises come with a price. They're not made lightly. When we make them, we often envision a future where our actions align with the words we've spoken. We set out with hope, but we don't always know what obstacles we might face along the way. Life has a way of throwing curveballs at us, and suddenly what we thought was a clear path becomes rocky, uncertain, and filled with unexpected turns. The weight of a promise becomes even more apparent when it's something we've promised ourselves, the commitment to change, to grow, to evolve. We're not just making promises to others, but to our own hearts, our own dreams. And with that comes an incredible amount of pressure, the pressure to. Promises are built on expectations. Every promise we make is not just a promise, it's an unspoken agreement with the world around us. It's the belief that something will change, that someone will be there, or that we will show up in ways we never have before. When we say, I promise, we are painting a picture, creating a vision of the future in someone else's mind, and sometimes even in our own. We are raising the bar, establishing the standard, and with it we begin to carry the weight of an expectation that will follow us, often for much longer than we anticipate. The moment those words leave our lips, they are like seeds planted in the hearts of those who hear them. And the roots of those seeds grow into expectations of what we will do, of who we will become, and of how the world will change as a result of our promise. Now, let's be real, expectations are tricky things. We all have them. We expect ourselves to be better, to be stronger, to be more present. We expect the people in our lives to show up when they say they will, to be there for us when we need them most. But the danger of promises lies in how we sometimes tie them so closely to those expectations. We start believing that a promise guarantees a certain outcome, a specific result. And while promises are meant to inspire trust, they can also breed pressure. We promise change, growth, progress, but what happens when life doesn't cooperate with those plans? What happens when circumstances shift, when we don't meet the standard we set for ourselves, or when we can't fulfill the promise we made to someone else? It's easy to feel like we failed when those expectations aren't met. We feel the weight of them pressing down on us, and that feeling can be overwhelming. But here's the thing about expectations: they don't always take into account the journey, the struggles, or the setbacks. They only measure the result. And in that, we often lose sight of the fact that promises are not about perfection. They're not about meeting some flawless standard. They are about commitment, that they are about intention. They are about showing up even when things aren't going as we planned. When we make a promise, we are stepping into a space filled with hope, but also with uncertainty. We're inviting ourselves and others to believe in something that may not come easily or quickly. We are acknowledging the possibility of growth, but also the reality of setbacks. Promises at their core aren't about getting everything right. They're about trying, about continuing to move forward, even when the road is anything but smooth. And it's in the tension between the expectation and the reality where we often learn the most about who we are and who we are becoming. Unkept promises, the pain of disappointment. We all know that feeling. It's a deep, unsettling ache that creeps in when the trust we've placed in someone or something begins to unravel. It's the sting we feel when the promises made to us go unfulfilled, when the person we depended on lets us down, or when we let ourselves down. It's the way hope feels like it's been pulled out from under us and the air feels just a little bit thinner. That feeling isn't just about the promise itself, it's about the weight of the unfulfilled expectation that lingers long after the words were spoken. It's the idea that something we thought was guaranteed, something we believed in, has disappeared into thin air. And sometimes that disappointment cuts deeper than we expect, because it's not just about the promise, it's about the trust that's broken, the faith that's shaken, and the belief that we placed in something or someone that didn't follow through. But the pain of unkept promises doesn't just come from the disappointment of others, it often comes from the promises we make to ourselves. How many times have we promised ourselves that we would do better, be better, change our habits, start fresh? How many times have we set our sights on something only to find ourselves still standing in the same place, struggling to take that first step? The pain of not keeping those promises to ourselves can feel just as heavy, if not heavier. We look in the mirror and wonder why we haven't followed through, why we haven't made the changes we so desperately desire. It's easy to spiral into self-doubt, to think that maybe we aren't good enough, that we aren't capable of fulfilling the commitments we've set for ourselves. The disappointment becomes internalized, and suddenly it's no longer just about the promise, it's about who we think we are because we could not. The promise of change is one of the most powerful promises we can make. We tell ourselves, this year will be different. I will be different. We promise to grow, to evolve, to leave behind the parts of ourselves that no longer serve us. The promise of change is filled with hope. It's filled with possibility. And when we make it, we feel like we're standing on the edge of something new, something fresh, something we've always dreamed of becoming. But what we often forget is that change doesn't happen overnight. The path to becoming who we're meant to be is not a straight line, it's a winding road filled with twists, turns, setbacks, and moments where we want to give up. In the beginning, the promise of change feels so real. We set our intentions, we feel excited, maybe even empowered. But soon reality kicks in and that excitement can begin to fade. Change doesn't happen in an instant. It doesn't happen just because we make a promise to ourselves. It requires something deeper. It requires action. It requires us to show up every single day, even when we don't feel like it, even when the results are slow, even when it feels like we're not making progress at all. It's easy to become discouraged when the change we envision seems so far out of reach, when the weight of our old habits or our old ways of thinking feels like a heavy burden we can't shake. But here's the truth: change is messy. It's not neat, it's not linear, and it's not always as quick as we hope it will be. We may fall back into old patterns, we may slip up, and we may question. The danger of overcommitting is something many of us are all too familiar with. It's easy to get caught up in the rush of wanting to do it all, be it all, and promise it all. We want to help others to achieve our goals, to show up for every single person who needs us, and to be the solution to every problem. The problem is, in the process of overcommitting, we stretch ourselves too thin, and suddenly the things we promised to do lose their true meaning and value. We think that if we just say yes enough, if we push ourselves a little harder, we'll get it all done and we'll do it perfectly. But in reality, overcommitting is like trying to fill a cup that has no bottom. It doesn't matter how much you pour, and it will never be enough. When we take on too much, we rob ourselves of the energy and focus we need for the things that truly matter. We lose sight of our own well-being in the face of everyone else's needs. The danger lies in believing that we are invincible, that we can keep up with the demands of life, work, family, friends, and personal growth all at once, without recognizing that there are limits to what we can handle. We try to be everywhere and do everything, and before we know it, we're exhausted, overwhelmed, and stretched so thin that we start to feel like we're failing at it all. We break promises, not because we don't care, but because we have reached the point where we no longer have the capacity to keep up with the weight of our own commitments. Overcommitting doesn't just drain our energy, it drains our joy. The things we were once passionate about, the promises we made with excitement and purpose begin to feel like burdens. We lose our ability to be fully present, to invest in the moments that matter, because we're too busy juggling everything else. Promises and the path to growth are intertwined in ways we often fail to recognize. When we make a promise, especially to ourselves, we are not just committing to an action, we're committing to the journey that comes with it. We are stepping into the unknown, into the space between where we are and where we want to be. And this space, this in between, is where growth happens. It's messy, uncomfortable, and often filled with moments of doubt. But growth never comes from perfection. It comes from the willingness to show up even when the path is unclear, even when the process feels like a struggle. Every promise we make, whether it's to improve our health, strengthen our relationships, or transform our mindset, carries with it the potential for growth. But the real lesson is in how we navigate the bumps along the way. When we break a promise or fall short of our expectations, it doesn't mean we failed, it means we're in the midst of learning. The setbacks, the missteps, the moments when we feel like we're not making any progress at all are not signs of failure, but markers of growth. They remind us that growth doesn't happen overnight. It's the accumulation of small steps, the willingness to keep going even when we don't see the results we hope for. Promises are not meant to be about perfection, they are meant to be about progress. They are about stepping into the future with intention and faith, knowing that the road ahead might not look exactly how we imagined, but that each step, even the difficult ones, is moving us closer to the person we are becoming. We often think that growth is linear, that it should be smooth, fast, and obvious, but the truth is, growth is more like a spiral. It twists and turns, dips and rises. We may feel like we're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but each step, no matter how small, is a part of the process. It's in the struggle, in the moments when we question our progress, that we find our greatest strength. Each promise we make is a challenge to grow, to push beyond our limits, to become who we were meant to be. And it's okay if we don't have all the answers or the perfect plan. The key is to keep moving, to keep showing up, to keep believing that growth. Healing from broken promises is not an easy journey, but it is a necessary one. We all carry the scars of promises that were made but not kept. It could be a promise from someone we trusted, someone we loved, or even a promise we made to ourselves. These broken promises can leave us feeling hurt, betrayed, and disillusioned. The pain of those broken words can cut deep, leaving us questioning not just the person who failed us, but our own ability to trust again. The healing process starts with one simple truth: broken promises do not define us. They do not determine our worth, our future, or our ability to love again. The promise may have been broken, but we are not broken. Healing begins the moment we acknowledge the pain. So often we try to bury our hurt, to push it aside, thinking that time will heal it. But time alone does not heal wounds. It's what we do with that time, how we choose to face the pain, that allows healing to take place. When a promise is broken, we need to give ourselves permission to feel. We need to allow ourselves to grieve, to process the disappointment, and to understand that our pain is valid. The world may tell us to just move on, to let it go, but real healing doesn't happen in a rush. It happens when we allow ourselves the grace to feel the weight of what we've lost and then make the conscious choice to move forward with strength. Forgiveness is another essential part of healing, but it doesn't mean excusing the wrong that was done. It means releasing the grip that the broken promise has on our hearts. Forgiveness is not for the other person, it is for us. It is about freeing ourselves from the resentment, the anger, and the hurt that keep us tethered to the past. Holding on to bitterness only keeps us stuck in a place of pain, while forgiveness opens the door to peace. But forgiveness doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. It takes time, patience, and the willingness to let go of the desire for revenge or the need to control the outcome. Healing comes when we choose peace over pain, hope over bitterness, and love over anger. Equally important is the forgiveness we need to extend to ourselves. We are often our harshest critics, and when we break a promise to ourselves, we can be consumed with guilt and self-doubt. But we must understand that we are human. We are allowed to make mistakes. We are allowed to fail. What matters is not how many times we fall short, but how many times we rise again. The healing process starts with self-compassion, being kind to ourselves when we feel like we've let ourselves down. We must remember that a broken promise does not diminish our worth, our strength, or our ability to continue on our journey. As we heal from broken promises, we learn to rebuild trust, not just in others, but in ourselves. We learn that we are resilient, that we are capable of withstanding pain and disappointment, and that we have the power to rebuild what has been broken. Healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about accepting it, learning from it, and growing stronger because of it. The cracks that were once caused by broken promises can become the places where light shines through, illuminating a path toward a brighter, more hopeful future. Healing from broken promises is a reminder that we are not defined by our failures, but by our ability to rise, to forgive, and to keep going. A promise to ourselves is often the most profound and powerful promise we can make. It's easy to promise others, the world, our time, our support, our loyalty, but how often do we truly make a promise to ourselves? How often do we commit to being there for the person who matters most, ourselves? In a world that constantly pulls us in different directions, it can be hard to prioritize our own well-being, dreams, and growth. But the truth is, the promise we make to ourselves is the foundation of everything else we do. It's the bedrock on which resilience and hope are built. When we make a promise to ourselves, we are committing to our own healing, to our own growth, to our own future. It's a promise to show up, even on the days when we feel like we don't have the strength. It's a promise to believe in our own worth, even when the world around us tells us otherwise. And most importantly, it's a promise to never give up on ourselves, no matter how many times we stumble or fall. That promise is not always easy to keep. There will be days when the weight of life feels unbearable, when disappointment knocks on our door, and when failure seems like a constant companion. But it's in these moments that our promise to ourselves becomes most important. It's in these moments that resilience is forged. Resilience is not about being unshakable. It's not about never feeling pain or doubt. It's about the ability to rise after we fall, to get up when we're knocked down, and to keep going even when the path seems uncertain. Resilience is the strength to continue moving forward, not because it's easy, but because we've made a promise to ourselves that we will. When we choose resilience, we are choosing hope. We are choosing to believe that even after the darkest of times, there is light. We are choosing to trust that every setback is not the end of the story, but simply a chapter in the journey we are meant to take. Hope is born from the promises we make to ourselves. Hope is the belief that no matter what we face, no matter how challenging the road may become, there is always the possibility of something better. Hope is the quiet, steady voice inside us that whispers, keep going. You are stronger than you know. It's the understanding that growth comes in waves, that sometimes progress is slow and almost invisible, but it's always happening. Hope reminds us that we are not defined by our struggles or our failures. We are defined by our ability to rise, to continue, and to push forward. The promise to ourselves is a promise to embrace both the highs and the lows of life. It's about acknowledging that we will face hardships, but that we are capable of overcoming them. It's about giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, to take our time, and to forgive ourselves when we fall short. This promise is not just about achieving external goals, but about becoming the kind of person who can weather any storm with grace, courage, and perseverance. When we keep a promise to ourselves, we show up for the person who has the power to change everything ourselves. In honoring that promise, we build a foundation of strength, a deep well of resilience, and an unwavering hope that no matter what life throws our way, we will rise and continue. The promise to ourselves is a promise to believe in our own potential, to trust in our own ability to transform, and to commit to walking our journey with hope and determination, knowing that every step forward is a victory.